So, continuing on from the last part. Okay, as I said, we're going to see how we can do this change of elevation. And yeah, I thought about it and I thought we should just skip into the automatic part. Okay, I do not press any key to move up and down. Yeah, just for steps up. And for climbing, we're going to see on a later video, and I think we're not going to do it automatically because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, your character may want to go onto the wall. Of course, yeah, you can do the same. You can make it so that it's automatic. And the other thing we're going to focus on, and mostly in the series what we're focusing on, is keeping a smooth movement for our character. Okay, if it jumps a little bit of the animations and all that, of course it is because these animations are just edited from the raw mockup data Unity gives you for free, and as you can imagine, yeah, we just work with what we have basically. Okay, and as I said, we're going to focus on keeping a fluid movement, and you know that doesn't have to have, yeah, that basically can takes into account elevations, obstacles in the course, if your player is running or not. And the other thing we also didn't notice, if I run towards over here, it's going to play a different animation. Okay, I didn't jump, now I jumped. Then walking, and as you can see, of course, he floats a little bit because that's the way we did it. We're not going to do a lerp, we're not going to do a curve, although we can if we want to. We're going to see. For right now, as I said, we're not going to focus on keeping a smooth movement. So, yeah, and also some stuff that, you know, floating legs and all that, we can take care of all of that with AK when we're going to create you know, a proper foot AK system like we have seen in the past. Okay, and yeah, most of those problems we're going to fix. The other way, of course, to fix them is if you have a lot of animations, but as I said before, if you already have a lot of animations, then that means you have a lot more resources. So let's go to the scripts. Again, we're only going to work with handle movement player and state manager. Let me open my bookmarks, and first we're going to go into the statics again, and we're going to add a few stuff which we know we're going to use. Run up on sprint, okay, climb max height and vault, no, climb max height and walk up height. We want this. I just use these variables. So let's go now into the state manager. Let's take it from the top just to make sure we know what we're doing. Okay, we were inside the fixed update. If we're not either holding, so that means we're jumping, or we're not in vaulting, if it's any of this, then do not run the update. If you do want to run the update, then we're doing the on ground check. And as far as the on ground is concerned, we also need to hard code if we want to do the angle check, oh, not the angle check, this, yeah, I called it angle check, but this is not an angle check. This is skip ground check. Okay, let's also fix that. Skip ground check and assign handle movement player. It should give us an error. Okay, skip ground check. Back to state manager. Okay, this is a way if we want to skip the ground check, which also the ground check is what places the character on the ground. Okay, so we are doing the on ground check, and inside the function, we're only going to add this little line, which if it says skip the ground check, okay, then do not run any of this. Okay, if we're on the ground then, and we're moving, we were doing a check forward, and of course if we were not already vaulting, and if we were finding an obstacle, then we're going to do a check. If that obstacle has the angle higher than 30, okay, then not higher than 30. If the move direction is not at the same position as the obstacle, then we do not have an obstacle anyway. Okay, and here's where the meat of it is going again, which is inside is clear. Let's go inside, go definition, and here's what we have. Okay, we have target distance depending on if we are running or if we are walking, and we were doing 3 raycasts to see if there is an obstacle. We are doing 3 raycasts because, as I said, you might hit onto a corner, so you do not want to vault over a corner. In theory, one raycast will be enough if you have an obstacle in front of you or not, but since we have the dynamic vaulting, then it's no harm to do. You're already doing the raycasts, so you might as well just use them for that. So we're doing 3 raycasts. Okay, target origin will start from the origin where we want to pass. We've seen this in the previous video. Now we're going to save the number of hits a little bit differently, and we're only going to make each hit true and false depending on if we have more than 2 hits, or this will also be equal. Okay, so if we have 2 or more hits, then that means we have an obstacle forward. Or it will also work for the ground forward, but for the ground forward, yeah, you do not need it, but since we reuse the same function, there's no harm either. Now we have an obstacle forward. Okay, we check the angle, and if the angle is lower than 50, that means it's not an obstacle, it's just the ground changes the elevation. And here's where we were doing our vaulting. We have seen this just on the last video. On the else of this, if we're not vaulting, remember to know if we are vaulting, we're doing a raycast, and let's close this. Oops, there's another error. Skip ground check. This will be true. We'll return to this in a bit. So remember, if we want to check, and if Unity didn't start, yeah, it's unfreezed. Anyway, okay, to check if there is an obstacle, we can vault off. We check forward. We check from an origin over here to see if that's not a full wall. And if it's not a full wall, then we check down to see if we can basically hit the other. If there is ground, and if there is ground, we check the distance from one point to the other point. So in the case of this, okay, we check there is obstacle, we check there is no other wall, and we check down, and we find a position, but we see that it's in an angle greater than the threshold we have. Okay, so that means we can step above it. That in code is, we're going to add it after we have, we do not want the vault over. For now, we're going to see some stuff. Okay, we were over here, obstacle forward. If it's under the angle, okay, if it's over the angle, then we check if we can vault. If we can vault, if we cannot vault, that means either the floor, either if it's a wall or the floor is higher than a threshold, we will start pretty much almost the same thing. we have a variable, will climb, okay, false, climb over. We're going to pass the first recast hit, and the first, actually in this one is going to be the third, the last one, so keep that in mind. Not that it actually matters, but just keep in mind that in future reference that it's the last one, so it's the one furthest to the right. It's not exactly the center one. If you want to be too much, picky about it, just use, just do a for loop. Just do one recast for the center and do two more for loops, one for loop, for left and right, and use only the center one. But I find that it didn't bring any problems, so why change something that works? Climb over, the new function we're going to see, and if the will climb still is false, then we're going to have obstacle forward. Now I just call this will climb for lack of a better term. I don't know, will step up, will climb, we're just going to say that it means we're going to put our feet on top of the next platform and move on. Okay, obstacle forward means we're hitting a wall, and this is the function we're going to call, we're going to write. Okay, the recast hit, a reference will climb. Remember, reference means that if the variable we're passing changes inside this function, then it means it's going to change outside of the function too. Again, we're going to have a target distance only slightly a little bit bigger than what we are actually looking for when we are looking if there is a wall forward to us. And we do this because of course we want to check further away from from where that wall is. If we're running, we're going to add a little bit of more distance. Climb check origin. Again, we're going to start from our own transfer position plus vector 3 up plus the walk up height, and this is assigned as 1. Okay, for 1 point up. Climb hit. The wall direction again is going to be the opposite of the normal we have hit, multiplied by the target distance. The debug draw array. Okay, if we hit something, ignore it, so it's not going to do anything. And if you don't hit something, then that means there is no wall. We're going to create a new origin position, which this time is going to be the hit point. We're going to reset the origin of the hit point to be from our own transfer position, just so that we know how much we are adding, and we pretty much only want to add this. Okay, vector 3 up multiplied by the walk up height, which is also 1. We do this because you might want to go and change it from the statics. The wall direction will be the same, only a little bit smaller, or a lot smaller, because the origin is from the hit point. Okay, it's fixed, so every time you hit, if your player is here with his horrible legs, if your player is here and he hits a wall, and even if your player is over here and hits a wall, we're always going to be doing a recast basically from the hit point, so it's always going to be, this position is always going to be fixed. Okay, we have our direction. We actually find the origin point, so we find the point or from over here, from the normal wall direction. The direction we want to have, of course, is down. Okay, we're going to assign it to the climb hit. The climb hit is over here. Since it comes, if it's not assigned over here, we can still reuse the same one. There's no problem with that. Okay, I think distance of 1 is more than enough. You should probably add this a little bit lower, and then you the ignore layers. If we hit something, we check the difference between our own y and the transform position y, and if it's greater than 0.4, then that means we can step above it. This is entirely up to you, entirely to what your animations look like. You know, all this has you know, an infinite amount of tweaking. You can add all this and make it better. So I'm going to leave that part entirely up to you. Okay, so if it's higher than our minimum threshold, which is in this case is this, and since it's this, and we probably want to be able to find all this stuff easily, especially, you know, let's call this World Cup threshold before, and that's why we are using the statics, because if I want to change something, a name or anything, I do not have to use, you know, go and search through all the scripts. I just can come over here and change the name, change values and all that. So it's easier to tweak stuff, and you should probably use this, or use the way with the statics variables I did. Okay, if you have a lot of tweakable values, like for example this, all this, which is can have a different outcome, you should use the statics. But okay, yeah, I'm going to leave that also entirely up to you. It's just how you like to work. But yeah, it's just an easy way if you do not want to go into your, you know, if you do not want to search through your scripts. So if we hit something, we're basically going to keep it as vaulting, since we already have the behavior for vaulting. Why not reuse it? So we're going to say vaulting is true, target vault position, climb hit dot point where we hit. Okay, that will be a target position. The vault type, we're going to add a new enum on the vault type, which is walk up. Climb up, we're not going to see it in this video, so for, you know, ignore this, only walk up. Okay, obstacle forward false, will climb true, skip ground check is true. If we make this to false, because the way the vaulting works, we did not need it when we were vaulting. Okay, you will not notice anything over here, but if I go over here, you see that there is a slight clamping, and that comes because we also do the ground check. So it places the character, when the raycast hits, it places the character there. We skip the ground check so that it just moves smoothly and lets the vaulting position to do its own thing. On the vaulting, it might make your character a little bit slower after he finishes vaulting, and that's why I've just keep it enable enable the ground check when I'm vaulting, basically. Okay, so basically that's all you need to do to see if you can climb over or not. Okay, and the changes we need to do now is on the handle movement player, and over here the first one we're going to add is on stop vaulting. Even if we had it enabled or not, we're still going to make the skip ground check false. Apart from that, we're going to go into the vault phase initialization, okay, which is called by this. There's no need to change anything from this. We only need to change stuff that come over here, and that stuff is on our switch statement. You can see that I made this the same thing, since they are the same thing. We have depending on our vault type, idle walk. Previously we just had an if statement for the animation. In our case, we're going to call the animation also inside the switch statement, okay, because it makes more sense. The walk up, the walk vault, run vault again, and here's what we are here to do. Oops. Now, override speed, again, we take it from the statics, the walk up speed. And this is wrong. If we're not running, we're going to crossfade into the animation, which is walk up. Okay, with this speed. If we're running, we're going to crossfade into the animation with this name, with this speed. And we're also going to, if we're running, because it basically is a jump, we're going to, or no, we do not need this. I basically just wanted to reuse the same animation I had for mid-air, and that's why I've made the on-air false, but that bring out other problems. So just to avoid that, I just use these two animations. Okay, walk up just does this. You can find the animations in the description. And what this is just basically running and jumping, and with a little bit of landing. Okay. You can tweak this, and you can see that they just transition back to either walk or sprint. Now, back again, we play our animation. We can still keep this. There's no need for any of this. The only thing we're going to change, there is need, but we didn't change anything because there was no need to change anything. And the only thing we need to add now is, because now our target position can have a different elevation than a starting position. Okay, then we need to also fix our rotation, which in this case we're going to just reset the Y, and we're almost set. You also need to add this just in case you have a wrong position. You might get a warning that, you know, your target rotation is 0. Then you simply check it like this. But this will only come if you passed a wrong position over here. So if you wrote everything correct, then that's not going to happen. And yeah, with this we pretty much set everything up, and there's no need to actually do anything else, because we have done it. We're still reusing the system that was handling the vaulting. So it's just about making, you know, making a lerp, moving from one position to the other while playing the correct animation. Okay, and when we stop vaulting, we're going to play this. Now, as far as the animations also are concerned, if you want to add your own, I had to edit all of this in Maya, and the only thing that I want you to just take into account is that if you look at his feet, and I can actually just make this over here, this will probably look a little bit better, and we can actually tick, oh, it's already ticked for the okay, over here. Okay, he puts the feet on the platform or whatever it might be, and you can see that I've lowered his hip position, so the foot that has the weight, his right foot, now is at the rules. Okay, of course with Maya this was just a few clicks of work, it wasn't really anything. And for the run up, we do not need anything because it's just a run animation, so it's just, we do not have to worry about feet positions and all that. Okay, it's just simple as this. So if you want to, you know, add your own animations, then just take into account what I've said. We can also add change bool, you know, close the special, even though I think you might not even need this, but let's remove it and let's see if we need it or not. for some reason it's stuck, and that's probably because we've added over here. You can see that even one small equals can change a lot of stuff, and yeah, it did change a lot of stuff, just that small. And you can see now, because I changed the root, it actually looks wrong now, because I bake the animation. And it's all this little fun stuff we need to do. Let's change this to fit. I think it makes him go a little bit higher, but we can also add an offset. Let's change this to 0. Let's see now. Let's keep it like this, and let's see. And yeah, this is much better now. Okay, now, and I have 2 more bookmarks. Let's see what this says. Okay, we've seen on ground, if skip ground check is true, then do not run the on ground behavior, which is what places the character on its position. We have already seen all this. And over here, which is inside the vaulting, when we are running, we've just had when we are running, we were doing a check to see if we can vault if we found an obstacle. Okay, now because when we are running, we are also doing a check further away than our vault check distance. We add to this value, then that could mean that when you are running, you could find an obstacle, while in truth, and find an obstacle and your character will stop, while in truth we'll just want it to vault over it. So to fix that, we're going to just change a different vault direction. So the origin we're going to create on the vault origin, it's going to be a new one. So that will be vault check distance run instead of vault check distance. Okay, when you are walking, you're doing a 2 points recast. When you are running, you're doing a 2.5. So that's about it. Okay, now I've covered everything for this video. As I said, we're primarily focusing in making animations play and having a smooth movement rather than making everything work together. Okay, because the movement is more important. If you have something that reacts to the world, it's better than having movement and not seeing any visual representation of it inside the world, inside the game, basically. And that's about it. Now, the one last thing you can also do is, you can see that his feet start getting entangled, or to get entangled a bit more. You can actually mirror these animations depending on your what feet is forward and what is not. However, the problem is that we have it inside a blend tree, and if we want to mirror an animation, we can only do it manually this way. So if we want to do that and mirror the animations, and if you want to do this, so that means you have to actually split the walk into 3 different categories, basically decline, run, and arm, into 3 different states, and mirror them exactly the way with the parameter, mirror them basically the way we mirror the way we mirror the jumping animations. Okay, of course I didn't want to do that, because you can see that then we will have to fix and refix and set all the transitions back again, so that's can be a little bit of a boring task. So if you want to do that, just do it the way I said. as I said again, we primarily focusing in interacting with the world and making a visual representation with the animations rather than making everything look realistically and doing it everything that has to because we are striving for naturalism and not realism, because it's a game after all. So now with more animations, of course, we can also have better we can get away with a lot if we have better animations, but as I said, we are only working with what we have. So okay, that's enough for one part, I believe. We'll see what we're going to do on the next part. Probably it will have to do with climbing above the bigger obstacles, and yeah, this series is not far from over, and I have some other ideas upon this, but the main thing for this series was to work to have a base, to then go out into the climb system, and then go out into the third person shooter series. And if we want something else in the future, okay, this will work as a base so that we can keep adding stuff and keep adding stuff. So you know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe. If you like what we're doing and want to see it continue, then consider supporting me either on Patreon, where you can also see all the videos much earlier than they go live, and you can also get access to a Google folder where I have all the scripts. The other way you can also support me is if you grab a project or 2 or 3 or 4 from Gumroad, including this one and including all the other cool stuff I have in the channel, and of course future projects. So that was a pen anyway, so I'll see you next time.